What's up, One Piece fans, and happy belated Christmas to everyone who celebrates or however you celebrated your holidays, because this, I believe, will be the final chapter released of 2025 for One Piece. So after this will be the end chapter of 2025, and if that is truly the case, if this is the final chapter actually dropped before 2026, this is one stellar chapter to go out on. I'm just going to say that. This is one fire chapter. So 1,170 for the next piece of One Piece. Let's get right underway with it, because the chapter now is entitled Contradictions. We get a nice cover serial of Jinbei just being such a helpful, ticket clerk, like a train conductor, like passing out tickets and stuff like that, but he's serving bento boxes and stuff, and we see all the chibi versions of the straw hats and stuff. It's quite a nice little, cover request. Now, when we jump into this chapter properly, I gotta say, when I read this chapter, I was floored. I was amazed, because I agreed with everyone. I agreed that 99% of the chances were that Ragnar definitely had a devil fruit. Ragnar is a devil fruit hammer. I don't think anybody called what's actually the devil fruit, what exactly happened, because is it the hammer that had a devil fruit or the alternative? We'll talk about it. But I love this chapter. So we start off this chapter, the hammer's sneak attack against Loki. Loki's like, what the hell's going on? Like, who threw that hammer? He can't even comprehend that, like, maybe there's somebody in there. He's like, the hammer's magic, the magic, who he shall be worthy shall have the power of throwing hammers, right? And he's like, who threw that hammer? Come on out. I'm going to kick your ass. And then he goes in. He goes, well, there's nobody in here. What's going on? Well, I do have to eat the devil fruit. So he goes towards the chest. And then the hammer, crack, crack, chitter, chitter, squeak, squeak, giveaway there. And boom, the hammer starts breaking down the flooring and stuff towards the treasury room. And Loki's like, well, you got to be kidding me. There's no way it's that bloody heavy, because it was sitting on the floor. Of course, and it's the same floor of the treasury room. The thing is that he's like, there's no way it's that heavy that it's actually just breaking the whole flooring and going down. I do believe that this is one of those, Ragnar is actually forcing himself or herself down into the flooring, you know what I mean? Like, he's not like sleeping, not idle or whatever, but is forcefully like, oh yeah, I am this heavy and I can break this floor whenever I want, but chooses to, like, do you know what I mean? Like, sort of flexing. Almost like a dude flexing up. That's what I believe is actually happening. Like, Ragnar's active, angry, and like, oh no, I'm going to stop you. This was by choice. Ragnar can obviously just be sat on the stone floor, and if it doesn't want to break it, it won't, sort of idea, right? Now, as Loki goes forward, he's like, this decrepit old castle is just falling apart. What the hell's going on? So he's playing a little bit of Mario jumping and stuff like that. He's doing some action platforming. He manages to get up there. We jump back to Harald, who's like, your efforts are futile, Loki. Generations of rulers. Now, this is cool lore. This I like. Your efforts are futile. Generations of rulers have watched over that devil fruit, and it has gone uneaten for centuries. Not by choice, but because nobody could eat it. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. It wasn't some pact or deal with, oh, this fruit, unless Elbaf's ruin is about to happen, unless the very destruction of Elbaf is about to occur, this fruit shall not be eaten. It's a covenant that they held for many, many centuries. No, it's literally, people have tried. They go near this treasure chest and Ragnar attacks their ass. That's the reason. And even says, as Loki's being chased around by Ragnar, and says, Ragnar simply hasn't acknowledged anyone as worthy. Who he shall be worthy shall have the devil fruit. I mean, I like the play on this. I do like, because this is very much, obviously Ragnar is Mjolnir. We know it, okay? It's 100% Mjolnir. You're just calling it Ragnar. Whatever. Fact is that I really love the idea that, like, that flipped everything on its head. I don't remember anybody calling that rulers before, kings of Elbaf, have tried to eat this devil fruit. They just haven't been able to get close enough to the treasure chest before Ragnar destroys their whole fucking castle around them, and they're like, God damn it, okay, until somebody's worthy, we lock up this room, Ragnar's by the treasure chest, Ragnar's happy, we just leave it the fuck alone, because none of us can take on this hammer. That is not something I thought was on anybody's bingo card or whatever you call it, for 2025. I don't believe anybody called that shit. I think it's awesome. Now, Harold, of course, still not in his right mind, but it's that weird, I know every reviewer's talked about it, but we know what Harold is right now. Harold has all his memories of himself, but he's been completely now brainwashed into devoting himself to Emu, and everything else is irrelevant. So he has the memories of himself, and he is himself if he were brainwashed, almost like by a cult sort of idea, right? So he's like, but now, with my current strength, and he goes forward, but then, boom, conquers Hockey, Gabon, conquers Hockey, Shanks. We love to see it, and they slice, by the looks of it, slice his leg right off, and you love to see it. But of course, he's going to regen, so it's all good. Now, this is where Gabon brings up what everybody thought, and unfortunately, it is a bit of a problem, and this is why I did not like it. I'm still thinking Oda made a bit of a mistake in if this is truly the answer. And for right now, I'm sorry, theory craft away, but I think this has to be the accepted answer until we see other information given to us otherwise. Gabon brings up these wounds are still causing him pain. His healing abilities are struggling to keep up. And Gabon states, don't let up, and he'll eventually be driven into a corner. Folks like him are weak to Conquer's Hockey coding. And Harold says, Gabon, you dare to oppose me, and goes forth, trying to attack him. Gabon says, you bet, we can't let you run wild when you've gone crazy, Harold. So Gabon has already acknowledged that this is not Harold. Everything's, he's believed what Jarl has said, and, we got to trust in Loki and all this stuff, right? The thing is, so going back to my point, when Oda brought up the Gods Knights and Conquer's Hockey is the way to defeat them, it really is setting the bar and the tone that we only have 2 Conquerors on the crew, where Yamato did not join, to everyone's big shock and disappointment. There are good narrative reasons for it to happen, but it could have been handled much better. It's not perfect narrative for Yamato wanting to join, gonna join, and then not joining. Fact is, we only have Zoro and Luffy. They're the only 2. So we're saying that when we come up to the Gods Knights, only those 2 can fight them. Doesn't matter how powerful Robin is. Doesn't matter if they're on the ship and, Jinbei can, fisherman karate, because on the open seas, Jinbei is right up there with Sanji and Zoro. I'm sorry, he just is, because water. He has, though that being said, the water weakness against, considering the Gods Knights all seem to be devil fruit users, if he were to trap them in a thing and friggin' dunk them in the water sort of idea, and fisherman karate his way through molding the water, he would probably actually, without Conquer's Hockey, be quite devastating on his own on the open ocean against the Gods Knights, probably be able to hold them back to a significant degree. But the problem with this is it says that Robin, Sanji, Jinbei, Frankie, none of them, Brook, forget it. None of them can fight the Gods Knights. We introduce these guys we barely ever heard of before. We give them Majin Buu regen powers, regen merchants, 100%. I don't think anybody in the community actually enjoys that factor. It works if it was just the elders. Giving this ability to all the Gods Knights really made them dislikable in that sense, because it's like, okay, it's, it's not that Sanji couldn't beat the shit out of Summers. It's that Sanji can't do any real damage to Summers. And it's like, well, and even if Gabon said, yeah, you're close, you will awaken Conquer's Hockey, I can sense it, whatever he whispered to him, saying yeah, you're close, but you need to find that one factor, it's like going Super Saiyan, you gotta find that key down. It's not just about powering up, there's secrets, there's keys to being able to do it. Sure, fine, dandy. Let's just give Sanji Conquer's Hockey for the sake of argument. That still only means that the Monster Trio can fight any of the top tiers for the rest of the series, and that kind of sucks. That, in my opinion. Now, I can make arguments why Jinbei would also get Conquer's Hockey. I can make arguments for Sanji getting Conquer's Hockey. But at the end of the day, that's still only 4. And people saying, wait, that's way too many Conquerors on a crew. Have any of you ever seen Roger's crew? Because he had 4 Conquerors all at one go. So, 5 actually, because Shanks was on the crew. And we all know that Buggy 100% has Conquerors. So he had 6. 6 members all at once with Conqueror's Hockey on his crew. The Rocks Pirates. Conqueror's Hockey out the ass with that crew. So the main character crew getting 3 or 4 Conquerors, I'm good with that. That's fine. And especially if Loki's going to join the crew. But once again, don't get your hopes up because Yamato, not joining, and then Loki, looking like he might, but then not. It is what it is. But for right now, given this statement, it really does suck that the Gods Knights were introduced the way that they were and with their regen abilities, because now it means that a lot of the fights are going to go down and most of the Straw Hats narratives start to fall. Doesn't matter that Nami has Zeus, doesn't matter that Usopp, this is supposedly his arc and he might get a great upgrade, doesn't matter that Robin's got the devil form. None of this is relevant if they don't have Conqueror's Hockey at this point, because they can't fight Admirals, they can't fight Gods Knights, they can't fight Eldritch Demons, known as the Gorosei. They can't fight Yonko, so who are they supposed to fight? And because if we have, let's say, the Monster Trio gets their 3 Conquerors, and they can all use it, they just knock out all the fodder with their combined Conquerors anyways. So, yeah, unfortunately for right now, this is not a good sign for the future of fights with the Straw Hats. I mean, Luffy and Zoro are going to have great fights. But what are the rest of them going to really do? So I'm hoping that this is just for now and there is another method, another secret. Maybe they managed to turn off the regen for all, Emu's power. They managed to erase it somehow from all, the Gods Knights and the Gorosei and stuff. And then everybody can have their moment. Maybe something like that goes down. But until then, I don't know. So this is a bit of a worrying piece of dialogue, but it is what we've all assumed for over a year, is that Conqueror's Hockey is the answer. Because we've seen Rayleigh be able to kick Summer's ass. We've seen Gabon. Gabon would have beat up the Gods Knights, we know for a fact, had, Colin not done what Colin did. So, Anyways, we move on for the rest of the chapter now, but I need to get that part out of the way because it's been discussed a lot, and right now this is all but confirming that that's the answer. It's Conqueror's Hockey. So anybody who doesn't have it, shit out of luck against Gods Knights, Admirals, Yonko, and Gorosei. So I don't know really what the rest of the Straw Hats are going to do. But Shanks says, Gabon, you are familiar with the weakness of these Gods Knights? And he goes, well, yeah, because I can't remember how many times they tried to take you back. So this is a big thing. They knew where Shanks was. They eventually found out that the twin, Garling found out that Shanks was on Roger's crew. And Gabon was like, yeah, no, they kept trying to take you back. And, so there's the God Knight ships going, that red-haired boy, we know you have him. He looks like our captain's son. Hand him over, Garling's son. And he's like, yeah, no, every once in a while they would come along and try to take you back. And he goes, but back then I'd slice them and send them packing. They were nothing. They were fodder. So Gabon and Rayleigh and Roger they were having a field day. These guys would show up, these Gods Knights, the army of God would show up, ha ha ha, we have regen, and they would just, Conqueror's Hockey, bitch, get out of here, and they would literally send regen merchants packing for fun. Yeah, they're awesome. Gods Knights are trash, they've always been trash, but it's hilarious that Gabon's like, yeah, no, and it sounds like they almost did a Vegeta, Gohan, Goku thing, because he said, yeah, I'd slice them up and send them packing, almost like, hey, Rayleigh, do you want in on this? No, man, I'm busy, giving Shanks and Buggy a timeout for fighting. I don't got time for fucking regen merchants. Your turn. And Roger's like, nah, it's not Garp. I don't give a shit. And he's leaning back in a hammock. So Gabon's like, fine, I'll go deal with it. Double axe, Conquerors, boom! Get out of here, Gods Knights. I swear they played rock, paper, scissors on who the hell was going to take care of a crew of Gods Knights back then. It just seems that way, like he's remembering it fondly. Like, yeah, I remember those trash guys. Yeah, they kept trying to take you back. We kicked their ass, sent them packing. They regened, but, they still, they were no match for us. So it's like, oh, all good. And so Shanks says, oh, yeah, the Summers guy did mention something like that. And this also, when Shanks brings up Summers, it also 100% the reaction in the present storyline when even Summers is like, big NL face, Scupper Gabon! He's like, that's the PTSD of being killed and sliced up by this dude's axes 100 times. Like, he's like, that dude, he'd be like, I can just regen. would you stop? It still kind of hurts. Like just because I can regen my head doesn't mean you lopping it off every 5 seconds doesn't hurt like a bitch. Men in Black, Jeeves, with the friggin' boom. He's like, you have any idea how much that stings? So Summer's suffering from the PTSD is now all coming together. It all makes sense, and I'm here for it. Gamma just like reminiscing, those were the days. Those were good times. But he says, frankly, it's surprising that a fighting force like that originates from the Holy Land. Most celestial dragons I know are bloody useless. And he's like, he's like, yeah, the celestial dragons all suck. I'm amazed that those guys actually come from there. They're celestial dragons. I mean, they're better than the other ones with the bubble helmets, but still nothing to me. They're party tricks for me. So Shanks says, those guys consider themselves completely divine, keeping clear of this world, and anyway, my life's always giving me the chills, sort of idea. Now this is where Gabon says, you can call that, Shanks, fate. So Gabon obviously knows something. He knows something about this. This is why, because when Shanks says, meanwhile, my life, it's always giving me the chills down here, you know what I mean? And so Gabon thinks about it for a second. He's shocked by this statement, and then he goes, well, Shanks, that's what we call fate. So Gabon knows something, but once again, it's one of those, you can't tell them until it's almost like a time travel rule. You can't tell them, otherwise it won't happen the right way. So Gabon, who obviously went to Laughdale and stuff like that, probably knows something in connection with this, and what he's saying is making sense. So Gabon's like, oh, alright then, alright. And that's why he brought up earlier, like, the title of Pirate King isn't hereditary, like, Ace doesn't get it just because he's the son of Roger. Like, it's all down to fate and destiny here, like, let's go. So there's a lot to unpack there with that conversation. Now we move on to, as I said, they're still fighting, and he's like, Gabon, I want to save Harald, though. He's like, but you're the one who told me how it's hopeless once he becomes a Knights of God. Like, Gabon doesn't know the answer here. He's like, I've never seen this crap. I don't know what to do. And he said, I'm afraid Loki right now is going to be our best bet. He's like, because Shanks is like, I don't want to kill him. I want to save him. And he's like, listen, man, I would send these God Knights packing, and they'd run with their tails between their legs, but I never cured one. I don't know. I just know how to slow down the regen and make them cry for their mommy. That's all I know how to do. So we jump back to Loki being like, all right, you better move it, Hammer. Don't make me repeat myself. You're the National Treasure's guardian, it seems, huh? Some mystical hammer. How do you even move? He's like asking the real question. He's like, what the hell is going on? He said, but I am so bloody over this. So he attacks the hammer head on while the hammer's spinning at him, smashes his hammer into Ragnar. Ragnar destroys his hammer, and Loki's like, shit, my hammer, what the hell? But it actually does enough damage, because Loki is him, does enough damage that the squirrel, you heard that right, the squirrel that is the hammer transforms back into a squirrel form with a hammer head, and it's just like, oh, ow, that hurt, sort of idea. And it's like, aw, the squirrel is adorable, by the way. Fact is, now the question remains, was this a squirrel who ate the mythical hammer fruit? Like, is it the ultimate? It wouldn't be a Logia, because hammers aren't naturally occurring. So it would be a paramecia, I assume. Right? Like, it wouldn't be, because it wouldn't be a zone. So, and it wouldn't be a Logia, so I assume it would be a paramecia. But is this the mythical, ancient, super chocolatey covered hammer zone? Or devil fruit? Or, so is it the squirrel that ate the hammer fruit? Or is it the hammer that ate the squirrel fruit? But the thing about eating a zone, the super special squirrel, I mean, that would, if it's a flying squirrel, that would explain why Ragnar can fly, quote unquote, is that, the hammer can fly and zoom around and stuff like that. If it was the mythical zone, flying squirrel zone, I could see Oda pulling that. I'm not going to lie. Mythical zone, flying squirrel. OP as fuck. I can see it. Either way, it's funny. It's either the super ancient hammer fruit, or it's the flying squirrel zone. And either way, I'm here for it. I'm not sure which direction it is, but I'm here for it. It's hilarious. It's actually fucking funny. So he does a hit on the squirrel. The squirrel's like, oh man, and get a little tear in his eye. We jump back to Harold, killing his guards and stuff like that. And Shanks and Gabon are still fighting, but they're like, how are we going to end this? And it's like, well, honestly, I never fought one that also had Conqueror's Haki, which makes sense that almost none of them would have Conqueror's Haki. I doubt Garling does either. We never saw Garling use it, so he probably doesn't. Or if he does, we never showcased, or he wouldn't even go after his own son. So if any of them have it, it would be Shamrock. Garling at this point would almost have to have it, you would argue, but he never, I guess Gabon never traded blows with Garling, I guess? I don't know, or they never fought seriously, because he's like, I'll be honest with you, never fought one with Conqueror's Haki themselves before, so this is a bit of an uphill battle for us. Plus, it is Harold, so he's like, and Jarl's still there on the ground bleeding, being like, stop Harold, you must, he cannot get his hands on that devil fruit. And so everyone's getting beaten back. He's being stabbed, of course, with all his regen. It doesn't matter. Harold's just slowly making his progress. Now we see the squirrel going full on, is transformed back fully into a squirrel. So this implies to me, it still doesn't really answer the question. This could be the real form. This could be the zone form. Either way. But he's like, yeah, I acknowledge your strength, young Master Loki. So you are to take the Devil Fruit. So there is a Devil Fruit. A lot of people thought Ragnar was the Devil Fruit. And it's the Mastery of Ragnar. But no, Ragnar is a Devil Fruit squirrel hammer of badassery. And there is a Devil Fruit. We don't fully see the design because it's very small, obviously, in Loki's hands. He eats it. He werewolves up. He roars. I'm going to assume that this is going to be the werewolf fruit. The Fenrir fruit. Just going to go off on that because the claws, the hair, the big giant roar. We don't actually get to see Loki in this form. I'm going 100% with the mythical Fenrir fruit for right now. He turns into a giant fuck off werewolf, direwolf thingy. I'm 100% going off on that from what we see. Now, Squirrel Ragnar is so fucking happy about this. Like, yes! Finally! Somebody ate the fruit who's worthy. Loving this. So Ragnar is just like, yes! Got a new master finally. Somebody worthy of me. This is awesome. I've been waiting for this day. So this poor squirrel's been alive for like 900 years waiting for someone to eat this fucking thing. That's a long waiting game. And anyways, the thing goes forward. We see it from Loki's perspective. Like through his eyes. Until he transforms back. He beats the ever-loving shit out of Harold. He's like, so, because Harold looks at, did you eat it, Loki? Oh, no, Dad, I always transformed into a giant fuck-off wolf. But anyways, he's like, well, then show me the legendary power. And he goes forward with an axe and a bicento. He gets his ass kicked. Swipe, boom. Harold gets ripped to shreds, beaten into a wall, then pummeled completely into the pillar, into the ground, gets a chunk of his head taken out, and finally he transforms back. We see like the big horns. We see a silhouette of the claws and stuff like that. Once again, it's the Fenrir fruit. I mean, Oda doesn't need to be overly clever with it. Just like the hammer being, doing everything Mjolnir is. Like, you can add a little bit of a tweak to it, but let's be real. You know what I mean? So, we love it. He's picking him up and he's just treating him like he's dog shit. Then he transforms back. Ragnar is now at his side. He's fully got control of Ragnar. Loki has picked it up. He conquers Haki's up. Harold says, I knew it, Loki. You have the blood of a conqueror flowing inside of you. And that's where the whole transformation part ends. It's a really cool sequence. I like how Oda chose to do this somewhat through Loki's eyes transformed. And then back when he was basically, we get silhouetted. And then when he goes back into his human form or his giant form, we see it. And it's a really cool sequence of events. Harold goes on to say, because Loki beat the ever-loving shit out of him so much. He's like, hey, you're back to your senses, are you, old man? And Harold says, it won't last long, so don't drop your guard. Look around you. I'm beyond redemption anyways, because he's killed so many of his fellow giants. And he's like, and Loki's there like, but you were being controlled, weren't you? Like, the circumstances are sort of different. It's like, it wasn't you. And Harold said, not quite. It's more like that thing influenced my thoughts constantly. I started to consider myself a god. You have what it takes, however, to lead Elbaf well. Try to get along with your brother, though. And this is where, like, we see Gabon, Jarl, and Shanks all, like, tuck it out, like, man, oh man. So they've probably been watching this. They've acknowledged what's going down, and they're going to have to kill Harold. There's no way for them. And what I like about this is I believe it's showcasing the reason Harold is come back to his senses somewhat is because Loki took the abyssal sign right off of him. The contract is off of his arm, but it's slowly regenerating. And that's why it's like, no, you have to hurry up. You have to hurry up. So in the same way that Shanks can't recover, well, he got it completely cut off. That's why Shanks no longer has the issue. But he says, you know, you have what it takes. Loki says, you know, you're the absolute worst. You know that? Having your own son take your life. What kind of a father does that? And it's just like, Loki has lived one incredibly sad life. Oda is good with the backstories. Oda is always good with the sad backstories, right? Loki's is right up there, I'm going to say. His own mother despising him, treating him like garbage, him trying to make a name for himself, but always being, you know, being angry at the world, understandably as a child, so people think lesser of him. His dad not being a good father. Let's just acknowledge, once again, Harold is not a good father, even Loki calling him out. You're having your own son take your life. What kind of a father does that? You're the absolute worst, you know that? And then, of course, the only mother he ever knew being poisoned. And him being locked up for it. Because he's a martyr. He's not going to tell anybody, oh, I have a big heart. So that's the reason, like, they killed my mother, so I destroyed all of them. That was the reason I destroyed the village. He probably said, nah, they were a bunch of weaklings, blah, blah, blah. Because he doesn't want to show anybody that he has a heart, that he's a good, you know, he feels and stuff like that, you know. This is what happens to traumatized, you know, kids with too much power, basically, right? And so Loki is just there like, why does everything have to go from bad to worse in my fucking life, you know? And so this is where Harold acknowledges what happened, saying, one last thing, I wanted to thank you about Ida. And he's like, what are you talking about? He goes, burning down Alcohol Village didn't make her better, but I was truly touched by how much you loved her. So, at the end of the day, Harold knew the reason. How, we have no idea, but knew that the people in Alcohol Village poisoned her, didn't do anything about it himself. Loki goes on a rampage, murders his mother's killers, just revenge 101, and gets locked up for it. And Harold, so this is supposed to be a really sweet moment where Harold knows Loki's true intention and knows Loki isn't this evil giant with, you know, wanting to be a tyrant and all this stuff, that's all a facade. This is supposed to be a tender moment where Harold knows his son better than we all thought. But it, in my books, makes Harold look even worse, because it means he knew about this or figured it out later, but left his son locked up until he needed him to be his executioner. So you knew your wife was poisoned, the person you wanted to be your wife, by evil people living in your land. You're the king. And then you choose to do nothing about it. Your son takes the appropriate action into his own hands because he loved her too. Supposedly you loved her, but weren't willing to lift a finger to do anything about it. Your son takes the blame for going on some rampage. You lock him up for how many years? And then when you finally do release him, it's, I need you to cut my head off. Yeah. Harold really showing what a great dad he is. Happy Father's Day, everyone. Like, god damn. No wonder Loki's pissed off. I'd fucking want to kill everybody too. God damn it. And he says, hurry, it's taking me over again because, of course, the mark is back. And Loki says, I'll never forgive you for making me do all the dirty work here. And that's when Harald says, I love you too. Now, that's a sweet moment. I will acknowledge that. That Harald always loved his son. I'm not denying that he loved both of his sons. But it doesn't make him a good father just because you love your boys. That's rule number one. That's the bare minimum of being called a father. You have to love your boys. He literally did the bare minimum, and then he asks way too much of him. He puts way too much on Loki's shoulders. And Loki is, of course, saying, like, I loved my mom, not my biological mom. I loved my mom. I loved Ida, you know. And, yeah, for all your faults, I still loved you, too. And this is his way of saying it, like, God damn it, you shitty father, you know. But acknowledging it's still his dad sort of idea. It's still a nice moment. I don't want to say that this isn't a really good sequence. It is. It's a very good sequence. And it is somewhat heart-wrenching. But when you know all the actions that led to this and Harald's stupidity that brought us to this point, it really feels like by trying to, once again, stretch himself too thin, Bilbo Baggins, butter scraped over too much bread, he failed at being a good father, a good king, and a good diplomat all in one go because he tried to be great at everything. I'm sorry. It's like all the people that say you can have a career, you can be a family man, and you can still be a millionaire who gets all the time. Like, no. You can't be the all-star athlete while having a huge, you know, a career, be able to be the handyman who can fix stuff while being a great father and being at home for your kids while keeping your wife. Like, no. Man or woman, I'm sorry, you don't get to have everybody's life that's on Instagram, you know? You gotta pick and choose. You can't be everything. You can't have everything. That's a pipe dream. And social media makes us believe that if we're not having all of that, I think it's half the reason my wife left me, but because she was poisoned by that type of stuff too, is that you think that everybody else going on the beach trips and doing all this stuff, you cannot have all of that stuff. And Harald did this very thing. Harald thought, I can be a king of my country, I can change my country, I can be a good father, I can be a good husband, I can mediate with the world government, I can be best friends with rocks, I can do all of these things that just there on paper contradict each other. And I can make all the giants, you know, I can solve racism while I'm at it, you know what I mean? All of Harald's intentions were good. They just, he tried too hard to do everything all at once, and you know, he fell flat on all of them as a result, and it really does suck. He did make minor solid changes towards a better future, but in the end he tried to do too much all at once, and boom, and this is the price that he ended up paying for his naivety, and boom, we get this giant thunder strike, which once again I believe that's the Ragnar's hammer, not the Thunderstrike is Ragnar's Devil Fruit power. It's the mythical hammer. It's the mythical flying squirrel. It's the mythical whatever. It's the lightning squirrel, Devil Fruit. He's got his own Conqueror's Hawk, and of course the Devil Fruit is the Werewolf Fruit, or the Fenrir Fruit. So, boom, we see the big shock outside the thing. Gorgeous. Double page spread. Like, this is a gorgeous fucking shot of the hammer just coming in and just shattering Harald's body completely. This is a beautiful goddamn piece of art. I love this. This has got to be colorized and hang on a goddamn wall. This is some really peak Oda art right there. And Loki, of course, is crying his eyes out because while he didn't want to acknowledge it, Harald knew what he meant. Of course, he loved his dad for all his faults. Once again, Harald has many faults, but he wasn't a bad person. And he wasn't, you know, an evil person. He wanted to be a good dad. He tried to be good in too many aspects and wear himself far too thin. And as a result, but Loki still, of course, loved his dad. Because his dad always said, my dear son and stuff, and that's all he can remember. You know, the only thing that matters now is securing Elbaf's future. That's the end of the chapter. You know, and we see all the kids, you know, they're sort of cheering there in the background in the snow and stuff like that, while Loki is crying and stuff like that, just acknowledging like he just had to. So his mom is gone, His dad is gone. He had to kill his dad with his own hands. And now all that's really left is his brother, Hyrudin. But Loki's Loki. Is he going to acknowledge any of this, right? Now, a lot of people are blaming Shanks. That's the end of the chapter. Now, a lot of people are blaming Shanks and Gabon for, like, why did they feed into this, blah, blah, blah. Like, they're bums. They're, like, not acknowledging that this is what Harald wanted and nobody's telling the truth and blah, 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 blah. The thing is that it's very easy, guys. It's storytelling 101. Obviously, Loki said, no, I don't want to rule Elbaf. I'm not ready for that type of stuff, what I can be. He's pulling a Dark Knight. How does nobody acknowledge that? He literally went up to Shanks and Gabon were there. They know exactly what went down. He probably said, no, I can be the villain. That's what I can be. People need somebody to hate. Let's elevate my father as not a terrible king, as not this guy who fucked up, as not this guy who murdered all these guards. I can be the villain. I'm already hated. So it's fine. It fits the narrative, and people will just believe it right away. So we keep this secret between us here. Jarl, Elder Jarl has, amnesia or whatever like that. Only Gabon and Shanks are alive here to tell the truth. And Gabon, that's why he so easily said, oh, you want the key? Like, Gabon didn't try against Luffy. He's like, all right, you want the key to Loki? All right. He's not worried. He's not worried about Loki. Because he knows who Loki truly is. Gabon is not worried about Loki being set free. This has all been a ruse that Loki decided to chain himself up sort of idea to be the villain so that everything else. Now, did he choose to chain himself up? Probably not. That was probably a Shanks thing. There's probably more to that story in the whole Shanks recaptured Loki 6 years ago, all this stuff. But Loki is probably in on a lot of this. Gabon and Shanks are like, are you sure? And he's like, yes, I will not tarnish my father's name for all my father's faults. He tried to do the right thing, and I don't want to, break down all the good stuff that he's been trying to do for Elbaf and stuff like that. He might have been a shitty dad, but he's still my dad, and I don't want it to, his name to be dragged through the mud, because he was manipulated and controlled by these evil world government assholes and stuff like that. So I'm going to take on the mantle of villain, and that's going to stay between us. I mean, I will be shocked if that is not exactly what went down. But I'm seeing more and more people talking about, I don't know how Shanks and Gabon beating the allegations, and it's just like, have you ever read seen a single movie with this type of shit? Like, seriously, The Dark Knight is one of the most popular movies, biggest blockbuster hits of all time. And that's literally the plot of The Dark Knight. So, I mean, does nobody watch movies? Does nobody see this shit? So, it works. It works for me. I really love this chapter. And once again, the chapter title, Contradictions. I mean, that spells it out to me right there. But what do you guys think about this chapter? I loved it for the last chapter. It's a banger of a fucking chapter. It is 100% a great chapter, and I really enjoyed it. So, what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as always. This was chapter 1170, and I hope to see a great continuation of this chapter in 1171, but in the new year, I'm sure. In the new year is likely, I'm sure spoilers might drop, New Year's Eve sort of idea around that time, but I'm feeling that we're not going to get the next chapter until into 2026. So for the last chapter of 2025, I thought it was a pretty good one. Hope you guys had a better year than I did for 2025, and hopefully 2026, even if you had a good, bad, or indifferent 2025, I hope the 2026 is even better for you, no matter how 2025 tended to treat you. So, that being said, let's end it on that nice note. Have a good one, everyone, and see you back in the new year. Sayonara.